Mike Radich here, and I'm now joined on the phone by King of the Cage Middleweight Champion, Daniel Hernandez. Daniel, how are you?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks for the call.
Sure, no problem. Thanks for doing it. Daniel, you got a fight coming up October 17th at King of the Cage, Sinister Intentions. With the fight being a week away, is all the hard training over with?
Yes, all the hard training was done yesterday. It was the last day of hard training. Now it's just, managing my weight, just working on small things, maybe some hand pads, some bags, and, light drilling, and that's about it.
Daniel, everyone who's been around you on a day-to-day basis over the course of this training camp has said this has been the best training camp of your career. And I know that gets thrown out a lot in this sport. Everyone always says, I'm in the greatest shape of my life. I've had the best camp. Everything's going great. Everyone just says that for the sake of saying it, whether it actually is true or not true. They just say it. But the people who have been around you during this training camp have said that your ground game is looking great, your striking is looking great, your wrestling is top-notch, everything is coming together very, very well. You're in the best shape of your life, you're looking better than ever, better than you did the last camp, and the camp before that, and the camp before that. You're just really on another level getting ready for this fight. From your point of view, how does this camp feel? Does it feel different? Do you feel like you're in better shape? Do you feel like things are coming together better than previous camps? Or does it kind of all feel the same to you? How does this camp feel? Does it feel different?
I think every single fight camp has been very, very good in this past year. I've learned a lot about myself, and I've had a lot of new training partners from other teams that have been able to open their doors to me. As you get older in this sport, you kind of learn more and more about yourself and where your weaknesses are. And so I've gotten to the point now where I know my strengths, and I am just polishing those and then adding on to my arsenal. So I'm focusing on my weaknesses, and I'm employing more and more people that are specialists in my weakness and asking them to help me out. And I am. Even being the champion and being 34 years old, I'm never closed to learning more, and I love to go to other coaches and have them tell me, what are we doing? This is what I need to fix, and this is what you got to do here. And so this camp itself, being my latest camp, has just gotten a little bit better. I started doing some more sparring out in Orange County with some striking specialists, with Henry Corrales and Francisco Rivera's team of All In MMA, and got to meet their coach there, who is an amazing Muay Thai coach, and not just be there for sparring, but be there kind of as part of the team. I don't expect him to say I'm part of the team, but to be there as that coach gives his pep talks to his team, and tells them. And just the other day he gave a speech about how hard it is to maintain on top in this sport. And being a coach myself, I give that speech to my fighters and to my wrestlers. And so to have him giving it and being able to sit there on the other end and listen to it was a great experience. And again, it was just another notch up in my training, both physically and mentally.
Mm-hmm. Have you always been big into cross-training, or is this a recent development?
You know what? The cross-training all began, I want to say, it's been probably 3 years now, where I met Josh Aviles from Team Diamond. Mm-hmm. It was kind of funny. I had won a fight, and I sat down in the crowd to watch Josh fight. I didn't even know who he was at the time. And a mutual friend, somebody that I had dealt with in little smoker undercard fights in the past, that was from Riverside Submission, Frank, he actually said, "Hey, Daniel, I want you to meet this guy." And he introduced me to Josh's head coach at the time, and was like, "Hey, you guys really should get together. This could help your stand-up game, and you could help Josh with his ground game and his wrestling takedown defense. This would be great." And from then on, it just sparked a great friendship, great joining of our teams. We trained there; they trained with us. And then after doing that for a while, then I was like, I knew Henry Corrales. I had known Cisco again since back when we were both on little undercard shows here in El Monte. And so we kind of knew each other, and then I just reached out. Finally, I was like, "Hey, I know we're cool. Do you mind if I come down and get some sparring?" And all these guys, man, in this sport of MMA, I've told everybody, even though we're fighting and it looks brutal, these guys are all great people. They're family people. That they all have kids, and so we're all honestly just out here helping each other get better and better. And so, again, with open arms, Henry said, "Come on in," and I went there. Francisco was there. They introduced me to their coach. One of their assistant coaches at All In MMA is Mike Rush, who, again, I've known him. He even set me up with a couple fights back in the day when I was coming up. So everybody was just real cool, and come on in, and we're just constantly helping each other.
Is this something that you do more when you're in camp, you'll go and get different looks at other gyms, or is it more something where when you're out of camp and you don't have a fight schedule, then that's when you really start to pick up the cross training? Does it matter, or do you kind of do the same routine whether you have a fight lined up or not?
For me, so far, it's been more of something I do getting ready for a fight. When I'm out of a fight, I'm still training, but I kind of dial it back a notch, give myself a little vacation from the actual hard physical and mental training. And so I do usually stick around my own gym during that time, and then when the fight comes up, 8 weeks out or so, then I start visiting other gyms and really going a little bit harder.
Is it true that you've had to enlist the help of your grandparents, so your kids' great-grandparents? Is it true you've had to enlist their help because there's so many people coming to this fight? You've had to go to the great-grandparents to watch your kids because there's no one else to watch them because they're all going to be at the fight? Is that true?
That is crazy. I don't know how you even heard that, but yes. When I first took this fight, the King of the Cage always wants to know, well, how many tickets do you think you can sell? And I'm like, I know I sell in the hundreds over here, but I don't know about going to Vegas. And Terry Treblecoff was like, we've experienced that usually people can sell about 70%. I was like, okay, well, go ahead and give me 60 tickets. And as of now, I had to call them and ask them for 30 extra tickets because all my friends and family are heading out. Everybody, I guess because it's Vegas, they're like, you know what, we'll go to Vegas. So my whole family is going. Usually we leave my kids with a sitter when we go kind of far away for a fight, being my sisters or my fiance's grandparents. And this fight, everybody's going. So now we have great-grandma, our Nana, is going to stay in one of the hotel rooms and let the kids watch it on the TV. And that is the best we could do for babysitting this time.
How much does it mean to you to be fighting in Las Vegas? Because there was a point in time in this sport, maybe around 2001, 02, 03, somewhere in that range, where the UFC was doing 5 to 10 shows a year. Most of them were in Las Vegas, and the roster was a lot smaller back then. So if you were fighting in Vegas, that means you were doing it under the UFC banner, and you were one of these select elite fighters to be fighting in the UFC. The pool was a lot less crowded back then. There were a lot less shows. So back then, if you were fighting in Vegas, you had made a name for yourself in the sport. Now, I'm just curious, does it mean a lot for you to be fighting in Las Vegas, the fight capital of the world?
Oh, it's huge. I'm so honored, and I feel blessed to finally come out to Vegas. So, growing up as a kid, we always watched boxing, and to be able to be in Las Vegas, anywhere in Las Vegas, and to be part of a fight, and not just be part of it, but to be the main event is just huge. The King of the Cage crew is really such a tight crew that even some of the guys, Steve Inman, and they're sending me pictures because they've gone out to visit the casino already and sending me pictures of, my posters are up, or there's when you check in at Hard Rock, how they have me and Daniel Madrid up on a big screen behind the desk, and that's just great, man. It feels wonderful to be here and to be able to get out there and accomplish this.
How has your life changed since you became King of the Cage middleweight champion?
Really hasn't changed. I always joke when people talk about something like that, or they come and they see the belt and they're kind of wowed. And I just say, I'm 626 famous, and that's my area code.
Right.
In my little world, I'm kind of famous here. But yeah, nothing. I mean, it really hasn't changed. I coach high school wrestling. My kids love to be able to tell other teams or talk about the fighting game around the high school. And so, I mean, it gives more of, even my own children, they like to tell their friends, like, oh yeah, my dad, you can type his name on the computer and look, this pops up. Other than that, nothing in my life has changed. It's the same old thing. I'm a fiance and a dad first, and then I'm a coach next, and fighter after that. Fighting has just always kind of come naturally, and I just do it. It's all the same when I'm coming up in the ranks or now. There's always a different goal or a different mindset. Before I was trying to earn my way to get to here, and now I feel like everybody coming up is out to get me, and so that gives you another reason to fight. You know what? You're coming to get what I earned, and so I got to send you home without it. So it just, nothing's changed. Everything's the same.
King of the Cage always has that small group of guys that they really get behind. A few years ago, they had Tony Lopez and Abel Cullum and Donald Sanchez. Those were the main guys. Nowadays, guys like you and Joshua Vilez, those are the guys that they're really around and they're really pushing. So I'm just curious, when did that all start happening? When did you first feel that King of the Cage was really promoting you, when you became one of the guys for King of the Cage, one of the faces, if you will, for that promotion? When did that start happening? Did that happen when you first became champion, or did you start to see it more and more as you were on the rise to becoming champion? When did you start to feel like you were one of the main faces of KOTC?
I think right around after I won the first couple fights on my first contract with King of the Cage, that started turning around. Literally remember the day where I sat down with Terry, and I was actually turning a fight down because the opponent had changed last minute, and Terry basically sat me down and said, "Look, you've been fighting a while. I don't really see anybody really getting behind you and pushing you and pushing you as a fighter. I can do this, and do you want to do it? I'll give you a 5-fight contract. I'll give you a clause in there that if you win 4 fights in a row, I'll give you a title shot." And so from that day, which was probably 4 years ago maybe, that's when I felt that they got behind me. Right when I won about 2 fights in a row, then maybe I opened their eyes, like, oh, okay, maybe we could do something with this. And, with guys like Josh and Henry, and those are knockout artists, so I think I'm right now the number one guy that's showing the grappling skills and showing the jiu-jitsu play. So I think I'm just a little bit different than the knockout guys, and maybe that's a little bit more of what I'm marketing for the sport. Mm-hmm.
You started your fighting career 3-7, but since then you've done very well. You're 15-3 since that 3-7 start in your first 10 fights. Just curious, go back with me to that early point in your career. What were you doing wrong, and why weren't you having success?
Okay. This is always a fun topic. Honestly, I was a wrestler first, a wrestler, then judo player, and when I first got into MMA, I was looking for somebody to help me out with my striking. I had been working at a little local gym doing some boxing, but I knew that I needed some kickboxing or something like that. And I found a coach that was recommended by a mutual friend. But in all honesty, that he kind of sold himself as more. He was saying he was more than what he was. He didn't know what mixed martial arts was. He was a Hapkido instructor, which kind of is a mixed martial art in itself, but he was also a 6'3" or 6'4", 300 pounds, and so he kind of was teaching me to fight his style, rather than watching me, knowing me, and letting me fight my way, and then adding to it and making small changes to it. So I think that's what went wrong. I was trying to fight people from the outside, using kicks and using punches to stay away from people. And trying to land that way, where I'm a wrestler and I'm a grappler first. So, and I'm also very short for my weight class. So I needed to close in and get inside and fight. He didn't know how to do that. So that's where we went wrong. The other thing was he was also my manager at the time. And being my manager, he kind of had it in his mind that from day one, you know what, you should be able to beat the best people in the world. And if you can't beat the best people in the world, then you shouldn't even be trying this sport, because, your goal is to be the best, right? And I was always right, along with him. Oh, yeah, you're right. But the truth is, in this sport, just like any other sport, you kind of have to build yourself up. And we're not all going to come into the sport and be specialists at everything. You got guys like Josh Aviles, who's a great boxer, great kickboxer. You gotta help that kid along and mold him to where he has that takedown defense and his jiu-jitsu game to help prevent him getting beat in that aspect of the sport. And, you bring your fighters along little by little. My first professional fight was against the 185-pound champion of an organization. I mean, why was I out in my first fight trying to win a belt? That is just retarded. But that was the kind of management I had. And then right after that, I had another guy that was a black belt in multiple martial arts. You know, I had my judo experience, my wrestling, but I wasn't a black belt, you know. And so that right there, me now being a coach, I would have been, no, you know what, I don't think this is the right fight. Let's get somebody else, you know. But that's where it was, and I followed that coach, and it took me about 3 to 4 years to finally let him go and then go on my own. And as soon as I went on my own and made my own decisions and searched out other coaching, that's when everything turned around.
Mm-hmm. When you were getting this advice and you were hearing, like, if you can't compete with the top guys, you shouldn't be doing this sport, and you weren't having success, 3-7, and I'm sure the money wasn't coming in, you're not winning fights, so you're not doubling up on your money, you're not getting show and win money because you're not winning. Did you ever consider leaving MMA when you were getting this advice, like, hey, you need to do this and this and that, and then it not happening? Did you ever say, well, maybe this isn't going to happen for me?
Yes, all the time. But, with any sport, when you lose at anything, you sit there and you kind of tell yourself, am I good enough? And if I couldn't beat this guy, how am I ever going to compete on the big level? And if I can't compete on the big level, why am I even doing this? So you go through that, but luckily, with my experience in wrestling and in judo, I was able to get myself past that, take a shower, throw those bad fights away, and then just get back out in the fight game and get back to it. And just, you always have to come off those defeats, and that's how what defines a fighter. If you can come off of a loss and shake that fight off, throw it away, get back out there, get back to training, fix what went wrong, that's what's going to make you better, and that's what's going to make you the better fighter in the long run.
How were you making money during that point in your life?
The same way I am now. This sport is not the best paying sport unless you're one of the biggest names out there.
Right.
So I currently own my own small mixed martial arts gym. We train fighters, and as most MMA schools would tell you, we don't make a lot of money doing that. Most fighters don't have a lot of money to spend, so you kind of train them just out of love. But I'm a personal trainer. I've been a personal trainer since I was 19, so been doing that for 15 years. And so that's where I actually make my money. So all day I'm in a gym, I'm coaching, whether it's fitness or wrestling or mixed martial arts. That's what I do. I get paid to coach people, and that's it.
Just curious, when did the Vault open?
The Vault, again, back in the day with my old manager, and he was my business partner at the time. We opened up the gym. When I first met him, he was struggling with a small martial arts studio, and I voiced interest in trying to open my own since I was a personal trainer. Hey, I can open any gym and just have a few machines, and I could train people and make money. So we opened up together. I want to say it was actually 9 years ago, because my eldest daughter is 11 and she was 2 when I opened the gym. So 9 years ago. And I've been on my own now for the last 4 years. I
know you touched on a little bit about your trainer and your manager, but what about the outside people, friends, family, just, I guess, clients maybe that you were doing personal training with? What did they think about your fighting? Because obviously the money wasn't rolling in, you weren't winning fights, you weren't fighting on big shows. Were they like kind of, what exactly do? You fight? Like, did you ever have a point in your career in those early days where you're like, were you questioned if you were a legit fighter or not? Did you ever have that kind of time? Because there's a lot of people out there who aren't really in the know of what MMA is. There's still a lot of people out there who only think it's the UFC, and if you're not in the UFC, then you're not doing anything. Like, did you ever have a point in your career during that time where you questioned yourself if you were legit or not?
No, I questioned if I could ever really compete on the striking level of an elite striker. Mm-hmm. And now, as I've done more and more fighting, I actually, this last fight, signing this contract, I talked with Terry Treblecloff, and he had a friend of his that was a world-class wrestler who had competed with Dan Gable, and we had a nice little talk, and he said it best, is Daniel Hernandez is a wrestler. I am a wrestler first. I'm a grappler. If I get my hands on you and we are that close, you are in trouble. And I need to remember that. I need to make every fight that type of fight. I don't need to go out there and do a kickboxing match against anybody. If I need to use that to get into my game, that's fine. but I'm not going to allow you to keep fighting me from the outside. I'm going to turn it into a fight. I'm going to come in. You're going to have to either stop me from taking you down every single time, or we're going to end up on the ground, and now you're going to fight my kind of a fight. And that's where I kind of knew that all the time, that, you know what, my wrestling's legit. My judo is legit. I've proven it coming up as a high school kid, as a child. I've proven it when I went into college. So I knew that part of me was great. And if MMA didn't pan out, then I would have definitely went and committed to the other side and tried out for the Olympics in either judo or wrestling. I would have done something on that level. But I chose this path, and now this path has actually panned out a bit.
On October 17th, you're going to be fighting Daniel Madrid. What are your thoughts about him as an opponent?
He's a great opponent. I think King of the Cage went out to find me somebody that was truly, truly going to be a test. Daniel Madrid is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and he is a very, very good jiu-jitsu player. He competes all the time in jiu-jitsu. I've actually chosen to wait to do that until after I'm done fighting. I think there's plenty of time for me to compete in jiu-jitsu tournaments. As far as his striking is good. He's a great striker, too. He's constantly working. I've watched videos on him, and I've heard interviews too, and he sounds like an intelligent fighter. If you talk to him, he sounds the same. He's constantly learning. He's open to keep transforming and getting better and better in the sport. So he's a very tough opponent. It's going to be a great fight. His height, is going to benefit him in the stand-up. But again, I've fought a million guys that are 6'2", 6'3", and I have so far always found a way to get inside and change the fight. So the one thing to watch for this fight is to see if, when I get him on the ground, if his jiu-jitsu can outdo mine. But we're pretty even as far as that goes on paper. And so it's going to be a matter of can I overcome his jiu-jitsu with my wrestling and jiu-jitsu combined.
Before they offered you Daniel Madrid as an opponent, were you aware of what he had been doing under the King of the Cage banner? Currently, he's 4-0. He's fought his last two fights under the King of the Cage banner, but before that, the first two fights of his career back in 2006, he fought for King of the Cage. So he had a little bit of a break there because he fought for some different promotions. But overall, he's 4-0 in that promotion. Were you aware of what he was doing before they offered him as your next opponent?
Funny thing was, there really wasn't like anybody coming up the ranks that I knew of that was, okay, this guy's fighting this guy, and this guy's fighting so-and-so, and then, this guy's going to win, and if he wins, he's coming up. That hasn't really been happening. It's kind of just been, okay, this guy's record looks good, and he looks like he might be able to knock you out, so let's try it, Mm-hmm. It's kind of been that way. Now, Daniel Madrid, I remember about a year and a half ago, I want to say, I actually was watching a King of the Cage event in either New Mexico or Arizona, and he fought a guy who's a tough guy, but he's a brawler. I actually forget his name right now. And he came out, and I watched the fight, and I said, oh, man, that guy looks pretty tough. That might be somebody that comes up the ranks. I don't remember what his record was at the time, but I remember seeing him and going, oh, you know what? He's very good on the ground, and his striking looks legit too. That might be somebody I got to worry about in the future coming up. And sure enough, here a year and a half later, he came up the ranks. And I want to say at the last fight I did 2 fights ago in Saboba, he won his fight against somebody from Greece. And all these Greek guys are pretty tough. And after the fight, my family told me, hey, he said that he was looking for a title shot. That he had beaten one of the toughest guys in the 185-pound belt, which at the time I said, no, there's no way. He didn't beat anybody that tough. But he was calling out for a shot. But I had also thought that he was a 170-pounder at that time, so I thought he was calling out Josh. But, now I think he was calling out me, so I take it as that way. And so, yeah, here we are.
How do you see this fight playing out? Because it's a very intriguing matchup because you guys both get the job done on the ground, but the way in which you do it is very different. You're a guy who likes to do it the more traditional way, where you go for takedowns, and then once you get the guy to the ground, you look for a submission. But Daniel Madrid, because he's such a tall guy, he likes to unleash his striking, rock his opponent, get them to the ground, and when they're still foggy, he likes to finish them by submission. So I'm just curious, how do you see the fight playing out? Do you see this fight as a fight where two grapplers are going to get in there, and because you're so good on the ground, both you guys are so good on the ground, it's going to cancel out and it's going to be a stand-up war? Or do you see this fight, because you guys are so good on the ground, you're going to be willing to test each other there, and it's going to turn into a grapple fest where a majority of the fight takes place on the ground? How do you see this fight playing out? Where do you see the fight taking place?
Part of the reason that that's the way he fights is because he's 6'3", 6'4". I don't know exactly how tall, but he is a very tall man. So if he can hit you from the outside and stun you, then he automatically goes to his natural strength, which is his jiu-jitsu. His striking is not his strength. His striking is what he uses to get to his strength, and that's a very smart fighter right there. So that's why he's used his reach, and he's been able to crack people and then catch them on the ground and finish them off with his strength. What is going to be the sign in this fight, I believe, is going to be, can Daniel Madrid stay on the outside of that cage and not let me get that close to him? Or is Daniel Madrid going to mess up and let me get on the inside? And I think either one of us could probably knock each other out. It depends on who gets those punches off. Is he hitting me from his reach, or am I inside beating him up on the inside? On the ground, I think that, again, I think it reverses. He is more of a traditional jiu-jitsu player. I am more of a wrestler with jiu-jitsu, and I like to ground and pound. So, is he going to be able to be slick and keep up his jiu-jitsu skills while I'm on top and smashing him in the face? That's what's going to determine the fight.
On October 17th, why will you defeat Daniel Madrid?
I will defeat Daniel Madrid because I've worked way too hard, and I know exactly what I need to do, and I know how I'm going to do it, and I'm just going to enforce my will. I'm going to get on the inside, and I'm either going to knock him out with my hands, or I'll get him on the ground, and I will not let him be slick. I won't let him slide. I won't let him be able to, move his hips. He's going to be stuck under me, and he's going to eat a lot of leather.
Daniel, we'll end on this. It's a little segment I like to call Really Random. That's where I ask you a random question and you give me the real answer. Some of these questions are custom made just for you, and some of these questions are random ones that I ask everyone I interview. So here's the first question. Superpower you'd love to have?
Superpower I'd love to have? I'd love to be able to fly.
Favorite movie?
Goodfellas.
Movie you've seen the most times?
Goodfellas.
Favorite color?
Blue.
Favorite guilty pleasure?
Anything with loads of cheese, whether it's pizza or nachos. I love cheese.
Best advice you were ever given through fighting, and best advice you were ever given through life, and who gave it to you?
I want to say through fighting, that basically to fight my fight, to continue to realize the type of fighter I am, and to stick to that and beat people with that. Make it that they have to beat me at my game. Best advice I've given to other fighters is to use what they are best at, and then to add on to their skills from there. Never to try to be a fighter that they saw on TV. If you're a wrestler, don't go out there trying to be McGregor. Don't try to fight like Anderson Silva if you come from a wrestling background. Build on what your background is. In life, always to love God and put your family first.
Now, you do this smiley face thing. It's a very wicked look that you do. I don't know if you're even aware that you do this face, but it's a smile that comes out a lot of times in your fights. I've seen this smile. Where does this come from? Where does the smiley face come from that you do? In
every single fight, I don't think it's ever gotten any easier or better. I am always full of nerves and anxiety. I've learned this over years and years and years that that's just the way I am. It's going to happen. So what that smile is when I finally get in the cage and they close it and the fight begins and I realize that everything's all right. I'm fine. Everything's cool. Here we are. I'm doing it. We're fine. Because up to that point, you have those thoughts in your mind like, what am I doing? Why am I going to this fight? this guy trained just as hard as I did, most likely, to get to this point, and I'm going to walk out there and fight him, you know? And then once I get out there and we start mixing it up, the smile comes because all of that thought, all of that feeling goes out the door, the training comes out, and you just feel good, you feel relieved. I feel happy, and I'm having fun. I'm literally having fun.
How did you get your nickname, El Leon?
It was kind of self-given. I had a few different nicknames given to me by many different people throughout my life and my career, and my old manager nicknamed me the Mule, and I hated it. And he just, again, him being him, was like, well, you can't change it. I gave it to you. That's your name. And you know, and I was like, this is stupid. It doesn't even suit me. It doesn't say anything about me. And so when I left him, I said, I need to come up with a new name, and it needs to mean something, and I just need to leave behind the Mule. And so my stepfather married my mom when I was 5 years old, and he's the one that said, hey, we need to put him in sports. You know, up to that point, I wasn't really doing sports, so he got me into t-ball, and he got me into wrestling, and he's the one that really pushed me in wrestling, sometimes too hard, but he pushed me in wrestling. And so growing up, his last name was Leon. So when I went to middle school and junior high, they always was my name on paper was Daniel Hernandez Leon, or Daniel Leon Hernandez. And then in the wrestling game and in the judo game, my brothers and I were all very, very good. And so we were just the Leon boys. You know, those are the Leon boys. Oh, that's one of the Leon boys. So it only felt right and felt respectful to give that back and to go ahead and throw that name back out there. And then, you know, at the same time, in Spanish, it stands for the lion. And, you know, how does a lion attack its prey? It's going to pounce on them, and then that thing is never getting back up. And so it fit my fighting style as well.
Have you ever had that fight that you're really, really pleased with, that one fight in your career where you're like, you know what, if I show up like this every fight, no one's going to beat me. If I come in here in the shape I was in, with the skill set I was in, with the mindset that I had in that fight, no one's ever going to beat me. Have you had that fight yet in your career, and if so, who was it against?
Yes, I had that fight outside of King of the Cage, actually. About 2 years ago, I fought a guy named Manny Murillo. I had just come off a loss. Manny was known, I think he's a military vet, and he was known for his wrestling abilities. And I knew going into that fight that I needed to stop. One thing that I was doing at the time was I was trying to go through fights flawless. I was trying to basically act like a wrestler. I didn't want to give up any points. And so I was trying to dodge every single punch, and I was trying to score every point and not let my opponent do anything. And in MMA, you kind of have to accept that that could happen, but it's not likely. So in the fight with Manny Murillo, I told myself, you know what, Daniel, we're not going to be flawless. I told my cornerman, too, I said, look, I just want to let you know what I'm going to do. I'm walking straight out in front of this guy, and I'm going to stand there, and I'm going to dig my heels in, and I'm going to trade punches with him, and I'm going to make him want to take me down. And so I did. I went out there, I tagged him a few times, and then he went to take me down, and when I caught him taking me down, I tossed him, threw him, put him on his back, and just started pounding him until eventually he gave up the armbar. I'm willing to take some punches and give them back. I'll beat everybody.
Do you ever see yourself going down to welterweight? Because obviously there's a lot of people out there, because of your height, you know, you're 5'8", 5'9", somewhere in that range. A lot of people would say you're too short to be a middleweight. Go down to welterweight where guys are, you know, in that 5'9" to 5'11", 6 foot range. Go down to that weight class. Do you ever see yourself going down to that weight class? Would you ever consider moving down to 170?
Just recently, because years ago I did do that, but I always just I almost felt like I accomplished everything just by making weight. You know, I walk around about 205, 210, and I would cut all the way down, and a lot of times I would fall short. I would get to 172, 171, and it just seemed like there was a wall right there that I couldn't break through. And then if I did make weight, the next day I just never really felt 100%. I felt like I weakened myself as a fighter, even though I was going down to be the bigger man. I also felt slower because now I'm going down against guys that are smaller than me. At 185, I feel a lot. I don't feel that I give up any power or strength, and I feel a lot faster than most of these guys. The one thing that is very, very tough to get around is that height. Mm-hmm. So But recently in the last year, I've been keeping myself in a lot better shape, watching my diet a lot better, and I'm walking around a lot lighter now. So it has come up with my friends, my teammates, and my coaches talking about going down. One of the other things was training with Josh. You know, he was the welterweight champ, and truly became one of my good friends. And I didn't ever want to really match up against him. I thought it would kind of be a silly fight, number one. And then, you know, who wants to beat their friend and take their paycheck or take their belt? You know, I didn't want to do that either. So we'll see what happens in the future. It might be a possibility, you know, a very real possibility. Who knows?
I'm good with whatever, because Paulo Filho, at one point in time, he had a great run at 185. He was number one in the world at one point in time, and he was the exact same size you are. So I'm good with whatever. If you want to go to welterweight, that's good. If you want to stay at middleweight, I'm not one of those guys who's saying that you got to go down there. I'm just, you know, he had a good run there, and he even fought at 205 at one point in time. So
yeah, I even looked at that a lot. You know, if maybe in the future, if the 170-pound belt ends up with somebody else, you know, maybe I would go down there to try to take that. I even looked at the 205-pounder before and thought, hey, man, I could probably go up and get that guy, you know. So, yeah, I don't think, especially nowadays, I think all these fighters are cutting way too much weight. You know, and you even see it in the UFC with people missing weight by large amounts. You see guys like Johnny Hendricks having to pull out of fights because they're trying way too hard and being too taxing on their bodies cutting weight. Honestly, I think everybody should just kind of take it a little lighter and let's everybody fight at a more natural weight. I think we'd all do a lot better and put on better fights. But, you know, we'll see what happens.
Right. Well said. Obviously, you're fighting on a fight card that has the title Sinister Intentions, but that's not you. You're one of those guys who, you're in here for competition. You're not one of those guys who goes in there and tries to hurt their opponent. You're here because you want to fight and you want to put on a good show and you want to compete. Has that always been your outlook on fighting?
I've never looked at MMA as a fight. You know, it is a fight, but not, you know, I'm not trying to kill this guy, and I'm not protecting my family from this man. So I see it as a sport, just like baseball, you know, any other sport. I don't hate the guys that I'm fighting. I don't have to convince myself that I hate them in order to fight them. I'm competing against them. It to me is just a more difficult wrestling match out there. You know, we're punching and we're kicking. I don't even think that in my mind I even believe that my opponent wants to hurt me. You know, Daniel Madrid, I don't think he's coming out trying to break the bones in my body and not let me ever compete again. I think he's coming out to try to win and take my belt. You know, so they're, you know, Sinister Intentions is a great name for a fight, but I don't think anybody really has that. I think there's a few crazy ones out there, but we're just out there. We're competing in a sport that we trained our butts off in, and we're trying to be the best at it. Right.
Obviously, I know it's part of your job. Your job is to go in there and finish guys, but have you ever felt bad after a fight? You've broken guys' arms, you've TKO'd guys. Have you ever felt bad for any one of your opponents after the job was done?
There has only been one or two times, and I apologized to a guy. I think I did it twice, and it was only because the ref didn't see him tapping out, and I literally had to yell at the ref, hey, he's tapping. But knowing the rules of the game, I couldn't let go.
Right.
Because if I let go, he could escape and turn the fight around. So literally had a guy in a choke one time, and the ref was on the wrong side. I'm yelling at him. He's tapping on the other side, and finally went over there, broke it up. And after I shook the guy's hand, I said, I'm sorry, man, I had to hang on until he broke it. And everybody understands. They know the game, too. One of my opponents, Will Nolan, Iron Will Nolan.
Right.
Tough guy. And didn't know that before our fight, he had it set in his mind that he would never tap out. I was either going to have to put him to sleep or I was going to have to break something. And so I got him in one choke. I thought I had him. He didn't tap. He wiggled his way out. I got him in another choke. He didn't tap. He wiggled. I mean, I think any other man would have tapped out. So finally, when I caught him in the armbar, my team, I could hear them screaming. My jiu-jitsu teammate, Annie especially, she screamed, "You're going to have to break it." And so rather than take that submission a little slower and give them a chance to tap, I just cranked it as hard as I could. And sure enough, you heard the snap, crackle, and pop, and that's when he finally tapped. So, again, after the fight, I said, man, why did you tap? I wasn't going to. There's no way. You were going to have to do it. And then so, it's understood. Again, we're not out there to hurt each other, but there's been a couple times where I felt bad, but that was about it.
During this 6-fight win streak you're currently on, you've finished 4 of those 6 opponents via armbar. Is the armbar your go-to submission, or has it just kind of played out that way?
Not at all. I really don't even like arm bars. I drill and I train my jiu-jitsu on a daily basis. But if I had my choice, I think I'm more of a TKO type guy. What I think happened with those arm bars is usually I'm pounding on them and they reach out to kind of push you off or find a way to roll, and you see that, and there you go. You take that arm bar if they give it to you. But yeah, definitely not my favorite submission. But it's just brought itself to the table on most occasions.
You haven't seen a second round in almost 6 years. The last time you fought to a second round, you actually fought to a third round, is when you got the stoppage. That was in December of 2009, so we're basically almost at that 6-year point of you not seeing a second round. Why is that? Do you have any theories on why these fights have, whether you've won or lost, they haven't gone to a second round?
Yeah, I'm a wrestler, so you know the way a wrestling match goes. We actually get in trouble if we're not making some sort of action happen. Mm-hmm. Whether you're on defense or on offense, you are constantly screamed at by your coach and by a referee to create action. So when I come out from the second that they say to fight until, for the whole fight, no matter how long it's going to be, I'm looking to press the action, and usually something happens in that time. I think more of the kickboxing matches or boxers or who you see go a little bit farther, or if it's a really well-matched fight, then you kind of counter and nobody gets the finish. But, I mean, how many street fights have you seen go past a minute? None, there's
right.
None. And that's the way I see it, is we're wearing little tiny gloves, and we're both professionals, and I've trained my butt off for 7 weeks now. I just can't wait to get in there, and I'm willing to go 100% for 25 minutes. So most likely I'm going to catch you in that first fight.
Do you even remember what it's like to go to a decision? Because it's only happened once.
Yes, it sucks. It sucks horribly. I won one fight, and it was, I luckily finished him at the very end of the third period. And I remember just being tired mentally, physically, everything. The one that I did that went to a decision, that one was in Guatemala, and the timekeeper never even started the stopwatch. Supposed to be 3-minute round. First round ended up being like 5 or 6 minutes. It was insane because it was very unorganized. And I remember hitting this guy 100 times from the top, and I was hitting him with pillows. I mean, I had nothing in my arms, and I should have finished him way before, and I couldn't. Decisions suck. And, if there's fighters out there that say that they like going the distance and they like going to a decision, they're either crazy or they're stupid.
Right. What would you rather have happen? You lose a very exciting fight, you get finished in the first round, or would you rather win a boring 3-round decision? What would you rather have happen? Have some great war where you go out in your shield but lose, or have some boring fight where you have to win a decision?
Honestly, I kind of view those the same. I mean, almost completely equal, because, again, if I have trained this hard and I'm go out there and me and my opponent are just coming guns a-blazing, and I get caught with something, and it puts, I gave you a show, and I gave this guy 100%, and hopefully I tagged him a few times, and he's going to go to the doctor with me. But I lost. But I think as far as the fan base goes, your friends, your family, the promotion, they're going to love that. Probably the same or more as you winning that boring fight. Because when you win the boring fight, you won. So everybody has to still, hey, you won. They love you anyway. Your promotion has to keep you going because you still got the victory, but nobody was really excited by the fight. So honestly, I view them pretty equally.
Interesting. What's the best thing that ever happened to you?
The best thing in life or in fighting?
In life.
In life, having my children. I was a much different person in my late teens and even into my early 20s. And becoming a father changes you in so many ways and honestly brings you closer to understanding God and knowing what true love is, and then being able to follow that in your own life with your wife, and even having a wife. And I have a fiance. We've been engaged for like 9 years now, but I consider her my wife. But there's a difference in the love when you have a child that changes you. And I can honestly say that I've used my understanding now of what a true agape, God-like love for my kids is, and move that into my relationship and said, you know what, I need to love my wife the same way that I love my children. Mm-hmm. And so the greatest thing that's ever come into my life has been my kids.
What's the worst thing that ever happened to you?
Whew, the worst thing that's ever happened to me. There's been a few things, that none of them are horrible. The matriarch, or what is it? I don't even know if it's the matriarch, but my grandfather was the head of my family, and he passed away probably about 5 years now. That was a very, very big traumatic loss. Something that I never wanted to see happen. That was a big, big thing. My oldest daughter is from a previous relationship, and the stress that I went through fighting to make sure that I still had 50-50 custody and things through this time, that was another horrible event in my life, and a horrible time of a few years battling that. Those two things have probably been the worst two things. I don't think I could really pick one over the other. And neither one of them was, I think, life-shattering. They were just very, very hard to deal with and very stressful.
What's your pet peeve? My
pet peeve? When people don't listen to me. I am, especially when, I'm a professional at many things, and, even more so when somebody asks me to help them or asks for my advice, but then when I give it to them, they choose to do something totally different or just disregard what I said.
Right.
That bugs the crap out of me.
Number one thing on your bucket list?
To travel the world. Just to take my kids to travel. It's mainly with my family, not just myself, but to take my fiance and my kids and to show them the world, to visit places that when I was a kid, we didn't have the money. My family, I come from a family with 5 kids, and we were living in El Monte and working manual labor jobs. And so my family growing up, we didn't have the money to travel and to see things. And so for me to be able to put that money aside, whether it's using the fight game to do it or using my gym to do it, to travel the world, visit all the different places and all the sites and show my kids that and give them that experience, that's a bucket list.
When you got into MMA, when you first started your career, what were some of the goals you had when you started your career? What are the goals that you accomplished, and what are some of the goals that you still have to accomplish from that original set of goals that you set way back when you started your career?
I did. One of those goals was even coming as a kid and a high school kid and a college wrestler. I've always you didn't need to have titles. You didn't need to have that, but you wanted to be remembered, people to be able to look back and remember you and to say, oh, I remember that guy as one of the best people, one of the best fighters, one of the best people, period. So that was one thing coming into fighting. I wanted people to be able to look back and remember me and say, man, he was really good. He was one of the best guys, whether it was he's one of the best guys on the ground or he was one of the best fighters, period. That's one thing. And the other thing was to become a champion of an organization. And so that was a great thing when I became the champ of 2 different organizations. That was a big, big moment to become a champion. And then future goal, probably a bucket list, to fight on the UFC card at some point in time, whether it's now, whether it's later, it doesn't matter. Just to say that you went, you fought on a big show, and hopefully win. That's a bucket list. That's something that I wanted to do in this sport, to be in the biggest show possible, of course. And then also just to guide. I'm a coach. I'm a wrestling coach, high school coach. I coach my kids, 7-year-old girls soccer. My son, eventually, I'll be coaching little kids sports. And so to set an example and to coach and to guide other people down the path, but to be able to be there and say, look, I've been there, I've done that, I've done it this way, but here's a better way to do it, and to give them a map of, hey, this is the way you pursue this. And you know what? These are goals you could set for yourselves, and you can do it. And so that's my future goal, is just to keep opening doors for my teammates, opening doors for everybody to follow behind and to kind of guide them so they don't have to take the hard road that I did, and take those losses in the beginning and try to learn and reestablish yourself. No, let's get on the path from day one, and that's about it.
Are you hoping that the UFC will take notice after this fight? Because if you win this fight, you're going to be on a 7-fight win streak, and you're fighting in Zuffa's backyard. The UFC is based out of Las Vegas, and you're fighting at the Hard Rock. Are you hoping that the UFC will take notice and you'll get that call after this fight? Are you hoping that if you have a good performance, they'll sign you after this fight on October 17th?
Honestly, I don't really have a hope. I'm not thinking about it one way or the other. I'm happy where I am right now, and I'm happy learning. And I know that with every single fight that I fight from this point on, I've learned, like I said in the beginning, I've learned so much about myself in the past year or two, in how I train and who I'm training with, and the parts of my game that are lacking and the parts that I need to improve on, that whether it happens after this fight or if it happens in another year, you know what? In a year, I'm going to be 10 times better than the guy that I am today. So I'm not really even thinking about it. I know that, we're in their backyard, so maybe they'll be there. Maybe, I knock this guy out in 20 seconds and they give me a call. And then that would be the next decision. Do I, walk away from the King of the Cage family that kind of brought me up, or do I wait and, stick my time out with them and go up to UFC some other time? Honestly, I really haven't given much of any thought to it. I'm just doing my job, and I'm doing what I do as an athlete, as a martial artist, and just gradually getting better and better and better and better. So, right now I do feel like I'm at my best that I've ever been in my career. And so could it happen right now, and could I go in and fight somebody on a lower level in UFC and win? Yes, I definitely think so. So that would be wonderful. But if they want to wait and let me win a few more fights and get even better, that'll work too. There's not a problem with that.
Contract-wise, are you able to get out of your King of the Cage contract if the UFC comes calling?
As of right now, yeah, I am. I'm able to do what I want. But again, it's not even a concern to me. I think no matter what happens, I'm always going to get better, and I'm always going to have fights. So I could go now, I could fight later. It doesn't matter.
Now, let's say you found a magic lamp, and you rubbed that magic lamp, and a genie appeared, and the genie said he was going to grant you 3 wishes. What would those 3 wishes be?
Those 3 wishes. Try to think these out, because I've seen a lot of kids' movies, and the genie always tries to trick you.
Right.
So I would wish that my children would follow along and live a long, healthy life according to the plan that God wants or God has for them. I would ask that my family, my friends, would not want or need for anything. And I would ask to free the genie.
I can tell you have a big heart.
Sometimes, I guess. I've always said, if I won the Mega Millions lottery, then I would take the first $10,000 payment, buy some things, and then I would start giving it out to my friends and family. Because I think even if you got $100 million to get, you hand somebody $10,000, that changes somebody's life.
Right.
And so I think I can afford at that point to give away a few $1 million to people and make huge changes in their lives that wouldn't even affect my bank account. Mm-hmm. So, literally, that's why I thought that question out. I don't even want to put a dollar amount on the money. I just want to say, you know what, as long as none of us ever really need for anything, that we should be fine.
Right. You either have a really big heart or you watched a lot of Aladdin.
Man, I've seen Aladdin so many times. Like I said, I got 3 kids. All we watch is Disney movies, and then now they've become my excuse to go watch the newest Disney movie. I say, my kids need to go see this movie, when in reality I want to go watch it.
Do you have a favorite Disney movie, whether it's one that's come out in the last 10 or so years or an old school one?
I'm trying to think. One that's come out recently that I really love, and this is going to be really, really going to hurt me as looking like a real fighter. But I loved what's it called now? I forgot. With Elsa and it's the winter story.
Frozen.
Remember, Frozen.
Yeah,
I love Frozen. I grew up with my mom originally until my stepfather came around when I was 5. And so my mom was very into music. And so I, to this day, love musicals. I love plays. And so I loved Frozen because of the singing and the music.
That's great. A fighter like you, a real tough guy, and you're a big softie at the core. I love it. It's great.
Exactly.
It's great. It's great. If you could change one thing about the world, what would you change and why?
Oh, geez. There's so many things, I think. There's just, honestly, I look in the world and I see there's so many things wrong and backwards. Honestly, probably, even though there's going to be things that would hurt us by this, but I would eliminate some of our technology. We have too much dependency on cell phones and high-tech devices and TV and media. I think it really hurts us as a people and a society, especially things like the dumb TV shows we put on where our role models for our kids now are the Kardashians and just these ridiculous role models. And I think that all comes from technology. But at the same time, technology helps cure certain diseases and things, but probably change that. Take away some of our technology. Make us go back to the basics a bit and take care of each other and talk to each other.
Daniel, real quick before I let you go, do you have any sponsors you'd like to thank, and is there anything you'd like to say to the fans?
I should have brought my list. I will try to say some that I remember. Eliminate Clothing, Total Nutrition, Monrovia, Fitness Factor, Arcadia, my team at the Vault in Monrovia, Gallagher Lumber and Metal, SureFit Mouth Guards, I'm drawing a blank. My buddy Chong Tizzle, who sponsors me now, Isidro Lago, and Crystal Lozal, lawyer. Man, honestly, I have a list right now of like 20, and I can't remember every single one without looking at that list. I apologize to everybody that I did not thank, and I'll try to remember next time to bring a list.
By the by, where are you right now? All I hear is cheering in the background. Where are you?
I am literally standing. I just got done about an hour ago coaching my 7-year-old team, and now I'm watching my 11-year-old play soccer.
Oh, I see. Daniel, thank you for taking the time to talk. I really appreciate it. Good luck October 17th at King of the Cage, Sinister Intentions against Daniel Madrid.
Thank you very much, man. It was an honor.